Welcome to Bible Answers Now, where we explore the depths of God's Word to uncover truths that speak to our hearts and guide our lives. Today, we'll dive into a powerful story from the Bible, one that shows God's providence, courage, and redemption. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you felt powerless or uncertain? The story of Esther might just speak to you. Esther, a young Jewish woman living in Persia, finds herself in an unexpected position of influence. She becomes queen to King Xerxes, a ruler of a vast empire. But all is not well. An evil plot is brewing against her people, the Jews, and Esther must decide whether to act, knowing it could cost her everything. The story of Esther is one of courage, faith, and the reminder that gods are always unfolding, even when we don't see the full picture. In the Book of Esther, we see a beautiful portrait of God's sovereignty working through ordinary lives. While God's name isn't mentioned directly in the book, his presence is felt in every turn of the story. This is a reminder for us today: God is at work in every detail of our lives, even when we don't see him immediately. Let's walk through some key moments in Esther's story and explore the deep lessons they offer us. In Esther 4:14, Mordecai, Esther's cousin, says to her, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" These words carry profound meaning. Mordecai challenges Esther to recognize that her position was not by chance, but by divine appointment. This verse reveals a powerful truth. God places us where we are for a purpose, even when we can't fully understand it at the time. Just like Esther, we might not always see the purpose behind our circumstances, but God does. When we step into our calling, we might just find ourselves being used in ways we never imagined. Are you willing to trust that God has a purpose for you, even in the most unexpected seasons of life? In Esther 5:1-2, we see Esther's courageous decision to approach the king uninvited, a bold and dangerous move. The text says, "On the third day, Esther put on her royal robes and stood in the inner court of the palace. When the king saw Queen Esther standing in the court, he was pleased with her and held out to her the gold scepter." This moment speaks volumes about courage. Esther faced the fear of the unknown, yet she acted in faith. God's plan was unfolding, and she was willing to take a stand for her people. There may be times in our own lives when we need to step forward in faith, even when the outcome seems uncertain. It's in those moments that we see God's strength at work in us. In Esther 4:16, Esther says, "If I perish, I perish." This is the heart of Esther's faith, a willingness to lay down her life for a greater purpose. She understood that her life was in God's hands, and if it meant standing up for her people, she would do so, regardless of the cost. In our own lives, this kind of faith requires us to lay down our fears, our comforts, and sometimes even our plans for God's greater purpose. Are you willing to say, "If I perish, I perish," trusting that God will use your life for his glory? In Esther 7, verses 3-4, when the king asks Esther what she wants, she speaks up for her people. "If I have found favor with you, O king, and if it pleases your majesty, grant me my life. This is my petition. And spare my people. This is my request." Esther's plea is filled with deep compassion and courage. She speaks up at the risk of her own life to save her people. Her bravery led to a dramatic reversal of fortune as the king listened and acted in her favor. Just as Esther spoke up for her people, we are called to speak up for those in need, to be a voice for the voiceless, and to advocate for justice in a world that often overlooks it. In Esther 9:22, we see the outcome of God's faithfulness, as the days on which the Jews got relief from their enemies, making them days of feasting and joy and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. The Jewish people, once facing destruction, were now able to celebrate their deliverance. The joy that came from their salvation was a reminder of the hope we have in God's deliverance. Just as the Jews celebrated God's victory, we too are invited to rejoice in the victories God brings into our lives, both big and small. When we experience God's deliverance, it is a time to celebrate, to give thanks, and to share that joy with others. The Book of Esther teaches us that even when God's presence feels hidden, he is always at work. His providence is woven through every circumstance, and he calls us to act in faith, to trust his timing, and to live out his purpose for our lives. So, How does this apply to you today? Perhaps you're facing a situation where the outcome is uncertain, or maybe you feel as though you're in a place where you have little control. The story of Esther reminds us that God places us where we are for a reason. He is with us, even when we don't see it. We can trust that He has a purpose for us and that in His perfect timing, He will bring deliverance. If you find yourself in a challenging situation, take a moment to reflect on Esther's courage. Step forward in faith, trusting that God's plan is greater than your fears. And remember, your life is part of His grand story, a story He is constantly unfolding for His glory. What's your favorite part of Esther's story? How can you step out in faith, trusting that God has placed you where you are for a reason? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear how God is working in your life. And if this message spoke to you today, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Bible Answers Now. May God bless you and your loved ones as you continue to seek His wisdom in every area of life.